Thank you for joining us here in Vancouver, Canada. You're in Calgary still now,
I
or
am. Yes, I'm in Calgary. That's where I'm based. And then I'll be out in Toronto tomorrow and this week for some performance stuff. So I go
okay?
back.
And
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
how
yeah.
long have you lived in Calgary for?
Born and raised. So
Oh no,
I've been in
shit.
Calgary my whole life. Yeah, yeah. We're
Okay, so this is
gonna be.
perfect
Oh
because
yeah.
I'm curious about because I've lived in Vancouver pretty much my whole life, so I know the music scene here. I did radio here for 15 years and 10
Yeah,
years podcasting now.
yeah,
And we specifically focus on indie bands and all the major labels. They don't need to get played on this podcast. But I'm curious then, since you're from there, like what's the scene like in
yeah.
Calgary?
Such a good question. It is so much more booming than I think a lot of folks realize. It's small, it's intimate, but it's very supportive. We've historically, I think, been known for country music, folk music, that we do, and we do it really well. But there is this budding R&B scene, soul music scene, blues scene.
Wow,
It's good. It's a really, really good scene. It's growing a lot.
that surprises me. So you're continuing to base out of Calgary, or has there
I
been a thought
am.
like a lot of artists are like, I'm going to go to Toronto. It's
Yeah,
bigger scene. There's more places to play.
yeah.
That
I
hasn't crossed the mind, or
crossed my I'd be lying if I if I said it didn't cross my mind. It has crossed my mind, but there's something about having a home base here and then having the flexibility. I mean, I work out of Toronto a lot. I did most of the recording for my current project there. But having the flexibility to go back and forth has been really, really nice. I will say that there is a bit of a magic to bigger cities where you just genuinely don't know who you're going to bump into, or there's always a recording studio open if you want to cut a song at 3 in the morning. That type of stuff is great. But here in Calgary, I find with it being small and supportive, it's a little bit easier to be, for lack of a better way to put it, a bigger fish in a smaller pond sometimes
sure.
until you really get your stuff dialed in. And when you go to these bigger cities, there's so many artists and it's so saturated. And so yeah, it's nice to have the duality of both. And all my family's here, my friends are here. And
Yeah, of course. Just
I'm
here.
not gonna lie, cost of living too in Toronto
Oh
and
my
some of these
God.
bigger cities, even where you are.
Well, it's crazy. Vancouver's nuts. And it's been nuts the whole time, though. It's not something new.
Yeah, yeah.
So, when did you start taking music seriously? Like, how old were you?
So I started writing music when I was 7. And back then when I did it, I was doing it just because I found that I loved it and it made me feel good. And then I started really realizing that I loved actually performing and singing and songwriting, probably when I was, say, 12, 13 years old. And then taking it more seriously around 16. I did Canadian Idol, very brief stint. That's a whole other story. And so I'd say kind of from 16 onwards was when I knew I really, really, really wanted to do this.
Hmm.
And I had a couple years here and there where I'd take a little bit of a break and try to pivot and whatever. But yeah, I'd say 16 onwards, it was just, I knew it's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, that's so cool. And do you have those songs that you wrote when you're 7, 8, 9? Like, do you still have that, or you're
You know
like,
what's
"Mm,
crazy is I remember the lyrics. I mean, I remember the first song that I wrote so vividly, but the lyrics were quietly and softly, you whisper you'll be there for me. Crazy, you left me with a promise you promised me. And then the chorus was keeping your promise to me. Is that too much to ask? Ask, 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 ask. Letting your mind run too free, you forgot about me. Like what?
as a 7 year
As a
old?"
7-year-old. But what I will say, it was very, I think, insightful as to how I would process the world moving forward, where a lot of times I write about my own personal experiences, but a lot of times I'm writing about things that I'm observing, be it with family members at the time and just other relationships close to me. Because I'm like, no one could have hurt me like that at 7. I didn't have no little 7-year-old boyfriend or anything. So I think I was just soaking in stuff that was around me, and my way of processing all of the things in the world was just putting it into song.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's very astute for a 7-year-old. So,
I think
like,
so.
what is the music being played in your house then as a kid?
Oh man, so diverse and so damn good. So My parents were big, big, big into R&B. So they introduced me to Aaliyah, they introduced me to Luther. Um, and then on my mom's side, my grandma, my aunt were more into like the Beatles and the Eagles and Elvis. And then my dad, he's from Jamaica, also big into Bob Marley and reggae music. So it was just such a blend, I think, truly of everything. But R&B music is definitely where it started for me. And then as I grew into my teens and early 20s, I fell in love with jazz as well.
Mm,
And so a lot of Ella and Etta and just that being able to mold all of those worlds together, I think is partly why I have such a hard time truly fitting into a genre. I know I make R&B music, but it's on the cusp sometimes, and I grew up influenced by everything. But
yeah, same, same. Sounds like
yeah,
we grew up almost in the same house for music, like
right? I'm like,
all over
"Wait,
the
so you"
map. Like, yeah, I
Yeah.
wonder if that's just being Canadian. I wonder how much that has to do with it too.
That honestly is probably a good part of it. That's a good
Yeah,
part,
yeah,
but yeah, it's such a gift. I don't think there's any type of music really that I don't love.
yeah, same. Yeah,
Yeah.
same. What was your first concert you went to? How old were you?
Ooh. I would have been probably around 9 or 10, and I think it was Destiny's Child.
Oh, nice.
Ooh, and that
So that
was
had to have blown your mind then.
you already know. You already know that was such an amazing experience, and then shortly after that, it was Christina Aguilera. So
Okay,
just vocal diva powerhouses from the beginning,
sure,
and then not too long after that, I went to a Garth Brooks concert, which I found equally moving.
sure.
Obviously, they're very different performers, but he's a hell of a performer too. So I got the good stuff early.
Yeah, no kidding. And what stands out still from the Destiny's Child first show?
I think the intricacies of how they took three incredible performers and blended those with harmonies and dance moves. Like I think that was the first time I witnessed superstardom in front of me.
Mhm.
But even from Destiny's Child's music still, the harmonies I think is the biggest takeaway that I take from their music. And that's something that nowadays I feel gets a little bit lost, but back in kind of the super pop or super R&B group era, that was such a key piece of music and that did so much for me. So yeah,
Yeah,
I definitely how they took multiple voices and made one beautiful piece out of those three voices. So
awesome.
so good.
Are you still the national anthem singer for the
Yeah,
Stampeders?
I am. It's
That's
funny you ask.
awesome.
It's so fun. I did I guess the last home game of the season I think was yesterday. And so I did that and it's a lot of fun. Oops, my apologies. Uh,
Are you a big football fan, or is it just a matter of like, well, I mean, it's pro sport, like I'll get into that if I can, or
I'll be real with you. If you asked me very specific sports related, football related questions, I couldn't answer them.
yeah.
But what I do like, I like the experience of game day. Like when I'm there, I take it in, I stay. I usually bring a family member. My grandma loves the games.
Mm,
Um, but prior, I mean, I wasn't super into
mm,
football. I'd seen the opportunity and thought I'd give it a go.
yeah.
And now I love it.
And same for the Flames. Like, do you do the Flames
I
as
do
well?
I do a few for the Flames. That's kind of been more of one-offs. I've done it a couple times, but that also is such a fun experience. Hockey, though, I did grow up watching and
Sure.
loving. Of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
course,
It's a
of
little
course.
bit different. Yeah,
Come on.
hockey. I mean, I love football, but I love hockey.
Hockey is just different,
It's
you know?
different. Yeah,
It's just
yeah,
different.
yeah.
It's a
All right. So
Canadian.
to what the news at hand. Congrats on Ghost Town. It's
Thank you.
fantastic. It's a great song.
Thank you so much.
When is the EP? Because you have another EP, but when is the new EP coming out?
So, right now we're slated for early next year. Probably February is where we'll land. But yeah, everything pretty darn close to being finished. Just doing the last couple decisions on which songs will make the cut, but it's
And
coming up.
what's the team for that? Like, because that's so tricky to do because you're so close to the product, right? You're so close to the music and
Dang, you're
you
so
want to get it
close.
right.
Exactly. You want to get it right. And that feeling alone, it was hard to even just stop the process and say, okay, it's done. We have what we need. And I mean, you'll probably relate, but as creative folks, I feel like you're always just looking for that last little moment where the work feels finished.
Yeah,
Someone had said that to me a couple days ago. What did they say? They said, the work, what is it? The work isn't finished when you put it out, but when you put it out, it's finished. They flipped it in some way that I'm like, that is true. You're not going to get that sense of it's done before you just put it in the world. But the process has been, I'll basically shortlist the songs that I love, and then I'll send it to my manager, have her shortlist what she loves, usually ask the producers, have them shortlist, and then put it together and see if there's at least we could draw a Venn diagram
sure.
around.
Like there's some that cross over. Like we all agree that that song's amazing.
That's right,
Yeah,
that's right. And then the other thing with this EP that I approached a little differently than my work before was really wanting to tell a story of a journey from start to finish. My first EP, I think I was just excited to be putting music in the world. The songs somewhat were relating to one another, but for the most part, I just picked the songs I loved and I put them on the EP. Whereas this, I wrote it a lot from a place of kind of a personal mental health journey. Even with Ghost Town, like that is truly to its core a song about feeling alone and isolating yourself and pushing people away and all of that kind of stuff. So trying to pick songs where the front half of the record captures that feeling and then journeying into kind of a place of self-acceptance and opening up a little bit, and then to the end of the EP, which finishes with a song that I wrote about my husband. And so finding unconditional love with someone else and for yourself, all of those things. So now it's like, what songs do we like and how do we fit that into the whole narrative, which
right on. I love that. And so, did you release while you were sleeping during COVID?
sure did.
Was
Released it
that
during.
a tough decision, or were you like, I got to get the music out? Like,
I think it was more the latter. It was more of like, I gotta get the music out. And for some reason, it felt almost easier to pull the trigger back then on it. I think because I didn't have anything to compare it to. I didn't think a lot of artists were really putting music out then. So I didn't overthink it. I just figured this is how we're spending quarantine. We're making these songs. Even titling the EP while you were sleeping, we made probably 80% of that album after midnight, I'd say, between
right,
midnight and 1 a.m.
right. While you were sleeping.
While you were sleeping, exactly. It checks out, right? Yeah, it kind of we didn't really overthink it. And I had my little quarantine cohort of usually 3 people, and fortunately we all made music and had the resources to record it. So we just figured, just throw it out there.
Mhm, mhm.
Less, I don't want to say calculated, but just less thought went into it, I think, than with this piece.
Interesting, but still lots of love. Like Strombo
Oh,
played at CBC, like Sirius XM and Virgin Radio and all that. Like, talk about maybe that part of it, like how that momentum from that EP sets you up for today's EP.
that's a great question. The cool thing about the first body of work is there just is no expectation. I kind of, for me, I'm like to get it on Spotify and Apple Music and to know that other people can listen to it was satisfying enough. But to see it hit these other outlets was like, okay, wait, this has some legs. This is kind of cool.
Well, yeah, it is.
Yeah, yeah, it was pretty surreal. Like I've seen videos of when people hear their music on the radio for the first time and you see them cry and I'm like, I wonder if it's really like that. Dude, I was like,
Has to be. How
it
could it
it
not be?
is. It's exactly like that. Or even like being able to tell my mom, like, Mom, turn on the radio. My song's gonna be on in five
That's so
minutes.
cool. Where was the first, like, was it in Calgary? Where was
It
the first?
was. Yeah,
Okay.
actually, that's not true. Now that I think about it, it was Virgin Radio in Montreal, I believe, that played Worthy. And that, at least that was the first one that I was able to sit down and like carve out time and hear it in live time and call my mom and have that big moment surrounding it.
For the DJ, like, here's a
Oh,
song from,
yeah.
yeah,
I'm shaking, like the whole everything you think
so good.
it was so cool. It was so, so cool. And then shortly after CBC, they've been just incredibly, incredibly supportive from day one. So they've been great too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and do you apply for all the grants and stuff like that? There's Canadian grants and
Yeah.
recording and touring and all that shit? Yeah,
I sure do. I sure do. I have to say, like, as tough as it is being in a creative field, sometimes, especially from the financial side and just all the things, The one gift that we have as Canadian artists truly is our grant system. And so While You Were Sleeping was fully funded. We had factor
Mm,
support from AFA. And then even on the project that I'm working on now was supported in part by Canada Council. Who else did we have? Calgary Arts Development also contributed towards it. So genuinely, if not for grant bodies, I don't know how I would have been able to do any of the stuff that I've done. Obviously, we have access to being able to record at home and do all of that, but to the caliber and to have that opportunity was fully grants. That
yeah,
was grants all day,
yeah,
every day. But
yeah.
it was
Like
such
get to the level that you want. Like you need help.
100%,
Sure.
100%. And I think for a long time, I knew grants existed, but I was so intimidated by the process and like my attention span. I have ADHD, like my brain's always darting around. I'm like, so I have to sit here and write out this huge ass grant, and it's going to take me how long?
It's days.
It's
It takes
days.
days.
It's days. But what I found is just equally like talking to awesome people like yourselves. If you treat it like you're just passionately telling somebody what you're up to, about your project, about your work, and kind of what you envision for this next chapter, it takes some of that tedious kind of administrative angle out of it and just
Mhm.
passionately explain, put it on paper. Yeah, it's a few days, but for what you get in the end, it's worth it.
It's pretty badass. Yeah.
Great.
How, by the way, I
Yeah.
read that you opened for Ashanti last year. Like,
Yes.
what the? How did that happen?
You and me both thinking the same thing. So, Ashanti is another one when you were asking earlier about some of the early music going on in my house. Ashanti was another one that I fully remember, like, being in the mirror, dancing to her music, like, in my head, I was Ashanti. I was her, 8-year-old
Sure.
Ashanti.
Yeah.
Why that came about. I have a really dear friend who's close in kind of the Calgary promotion scene. He works a lot with R&B artists, hip hop artists, and he caught wind that for Stampede there was a potential opportunity to pitch a few artists for opening for Ashanti. And it was one of those things where I was like, I'm gonna shoot my shot, but like it's
Have to.
Ashanti. Like, I have
Yeah.
to go for it, and yeah, in the end, it was opened for her. I didn't actually get to meet her by the end of it, but I will just take solace in knowing I breathed the same air as her. I saw her
On the same stage, you
on
set
the
it
same
up for her
stage.
show. Like,
Oh, and then even just being able to take in her show afterwards and to know that I'm watching her show, and I'm watching her show with all my family and my friends, and they're here to see her, but also to see me who just opened. Like, it was
yeah, that's a mind melter. Sure.
oh, it's a mind melter. Such a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Oh, it was absolutely amazing. She
So
was
where does that stack in the career highlights? Like, can you
I'm
pick
gonna
one thing?
you know what? That has to probably be my first or my second. There's another competing one which might surprise a lot of folks is Tom Cochrane,
Oh,
Life is a
okay.
Highway. Had a random opportunity where we were playing the same event, and then they put me just before him as well. And that was such an epic night because I remember like screaming Life is a Highway with my family on road trips and singing that song. And then I just finished opening for him. He did his set and then he jumps down off the stage. We all form a little circle around him and he's doing the what was it? Like the harmonica solo, I think, in that song.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyways,
Like in the
it was
bridge.
yes, yes, exactly. So that was also a that was up there. That was incredible. But
That's
yeah,
amazing, right?
those are some tops, man. It
Like
was
you look around like sometimes and just like, how am I here? What
dang,
the hell?
what a
So
life.
good.
And just so interesting of how full circle things can be. Like you're a kid growing up listening to music and idolizing these people, and then here you are in the same moments with them is just it's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
Amazing.
That's truly incredible. Justine, let's get outside of music and what you're known for a bit here.
Yes.
What are you binge watching when you find time?
Ooh, great question. Okay. I don't mean to make myself sound diabolical, but I'm like a true crime
So
girl.
many people are though.
No, and like maybe I need to talk to my therapist a little more about it, but like I'm in it. So there's a couple, a new show on Netflix called, I think it's called Monsters or The Monsters.
Oh, that's the Hernandez brothers?
And it has me in a chokehold, man. Like it's got me. It's got
I
me.
I must have you by I don't wanna guess your age, but I must have you by 25 years, I think. I'm 50. And
Wow. Well, okay, that's generous. That's very generous.
and
I
I
will say.
remember that, like, as a kid, I remember that story because it's legit. It's not like a fake story. This is an actual story of those kids that killed their parents,
Yeah,
and,
it
like,
is.
I remember it so clearly and vividly as a kid and thinking, like, "Who kills their parents? What
Yeah.
the f."
Who does that? And to what you're saying, I think that was probably one of the first hugely televised, like when we combined media and the court system together. And it just, I think it was around the time of OJ Simpson as well. And just was
It
this
was, yeah.
wow. So to
Yeah.
remember that, that would have been wild to witness. And sometimes I'm not gonna lie, I feel bad sometimes that I do watch stuff like that, but I'm very much a person that's just so fascinated by why people do the things they do. And so seeing how this unfolded and just seeing how people think, it's just
It's crazy, right? Like, did you watch the Jeffrey Dahmer stuff? Of course, again, another true life thing where it didn't matter if it was a guy or a girl or older, younger kids, like black and white, doesn't matter.
yep, yep, 100%. Yeah,
Just
just
crazy.
crazy, crazy. But I will say my TV habits are not always that dark.
Yeah.
There's that.
Like, I will say I don't get any sleep at night, but
Yes, that's true. That's actually a very true story. Hence, while you were sleeping, when I'm
yeah,
awake due to true crime, I just make albums.
yeah.
Uh, the flip side of it is I'm a big Marvel junkie too. Both my husband and I, we love Marvel. And so Agatha all along and
Oh, I
any
haven't
of
watched that yet. Is it good? Is it worth it? Because I heard it's not good.
don't listen to the naysayers. Don't
Really?
listen.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah, I'm
I
saying I've got a couple kids. I've got like grade 9, grade 7, both boys.
love
And they're fully like, they're in. They're invested, every Marvel thing, like,
it.
we watch it all.
Oh, it's so good. Marvel's great. And I find it's a nice escape from, I really like surrealism and things that can kind of be sensationalized when I'm not true criming it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but what are
Which
you watching?
which superpower I'll tell you in a sec. Which
Okay.
superpower would you wanna have?
Hmm. I would say I think invisibility and
Mm,
I couldn't even really give you a great reason for it. The first things that were coming to mind, like if I could fly and whatever, but I think invisibility, and then I could maybe be a fly on the wall on like sneak into big people's recording sessions and seeing their
nice.
writing process. And yeah, I think to just go invisible all of a sudden would be kind of cool.
That would be very cool.
Like that. I would like
I'm watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine with my kids. Watching
ooh.
that new, I can't remember what it's called. There's that, NHL series where they follow a couple players and they go game day and, like, all that shit. It's very
Oh,
cool.
that'd be cool. So you're seeing the behind the scenes of everything leading up to it.
Yeah. Yeah,
That'd
it's
be cool.
great. Yeah, we're kinda all over the map, really.
Yeah.
A lot of Simpsons still, you
Simpsons will
know, yeah, there's just so much shit on Netflix and Disney and Prime, and, I canceled my Cablevision about a year and a half ago. Do not
oh yeah.
regret it
Yeah.
at all.
You don't need it. You
Like,
just
at
don't.
all, $60 a month or some shit for nothing. It's like all the Disney and Netflix and all that doesn't even add up to that, and it's way
Exactly.
more stuff that I'd rather watch.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, we did the same thing.
yeah.
We're well covered. Well covered.
Are you big into reading? Like, what are you reading right now?
I wish that I was carving out more time for reading, but there's a couple that every now and then I kind of circle back to. Rick Rubin has a really, really great book. Wow, what is it called? Because now I blank on it.
Mm,
Creative
y
Way, I think. The Creative
y
Way.
yeah.
That one's great. And
Autobiographies are the way to go.
so good. So
So good.
good. And the thing with Rick Rubin is you're getting more of just a view of how he looks at the world. That's what was really refreshing about it is it wasn't like it's in part kind of his story, but it's more just how he thinks.
Yeah,
And that was just yeah, that was great.
yeah,
And
so
then
good.
he's so good. Another great one is The Mountain Is You. That's one that it is in my bag, it's toted with me all the time, but the premise is pretty much just deconstructing self-limitations and self-limiting beliefs, especially in the season, I think creatively and personally the past few years, my biggest enemy has just it's been myself. It's completely been myself, and that is a book that, one, it calls you out on those types of thoughts, and then it gives you very practical ways to just rip all that apart and kind of rebuild. It's such a breath of fresh air. Wicked book.
That's
Wicked.
great. I end every podcast,
Mhm.
not these interviews, but the actual, like, I have 3 guests a week on my podcast. I don't know if you know about the podcast or not, but this
Yeah,
is
I had
you're one of 3 guests in an upcoming podcast. But
awesome.
I end every one by saying, like, "Don't be an asshole, nobody wants to be around that,"
Love it.
right? Play hard, have fun, and most of all, believe in yourself.
Yes.
That's the key thing. Over the years, like, through my success in radio, through the success in this podcast, it's all about self-belief. It's
Yes.
about believing that you can get the job done and do it well and get it to people where people actually care and give a shit about what you do.
That part.
The correlations between what I do, even though I don't sing or
Yeah.
produce things in studio, but the correlations between what you and I do,
Mhm.
there's tons of it. There's
Oh,
so much overlapping creativity.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
I feel too, like, even just with you, the fact that you are using your voice to make an impact and people, I mean, people aren't stupid. We know this. People can detect, they can hear things in our voice. And so what you're saying is believing in yourself, like that's such an important thing, whether I'm stepping on stage or you're getting on the mic. Like if we don't believe ourselves, people can sense that.
Oh yeah.
And it is a fact.
They say
100.
you can fake it till you make it, and it's 100% true.
So true.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
yeah, I feel that deeply. I love how you end those off. That's great.
Uh, I'm gonna wrap it up here in a couple. I wanna respect your time. I said I was probably 15, 20 minutes, but I
No,
want
this is
a couple
great.
more.
You're talking
Uh,
to me. It's
and
great.
and and because you brought up Marvel, I wasn't gonna ask this, but I have an asterisk down here, and I'm like, "Yeah, maybe I will now."
Yeah.
Star Wars or Star Trek?
Ooh, okay. Don't kill me. Okay. This is just the truth coming out my little heart. I didn't love either. I didn't
Oh,
love either. And I did give both a shot. My husband kind of was like, you have to do a deep dive to really get it. And I found I'm more Star Trek, to be honest with you.
wow.
Mhm.
You're
Mhm.
definitely in the minority
I
of the
know.
most people are like, "Oh, dude, come on.
I know. Are you
Star
yours?
I'm Star Wars for sure." I love Star Trek, like, I
Yeah.
love Star Trek. I think The Next Generation is my favorite,
Mhm.
although if I really wanna smoke a doob and kind
Yeah,
of,
yeah, yeah,
really get into it,
yeah,
I will watch the original, with,
and go way
Captain
back.
James T. Kirk and Shatner and all that, but, yeah, I'm a Star Wars guy, like, that was the first movie I saw in theater.
No
I
way.
was 8 years old when it came out or something like that,
Yeah,
uh, and it just monopolized my life, like, that was all I wanted.
yeah,
I want the Hoth planet, I want Princess Leia, I want Han Solo, I want Luke Skywalker, I want all that stuff. As a kid, I could just that's all I wanted.
yeah.
Definitely
I
Star
mean,
Wars.
they hit the nail on the head. I think with both of those franchises, but Star Wars specifically was like, what a way to get someone to dream, man. And they had the dreamer side of it, and then like the heroism to it, and then like the dark
Right.
character. I get it. It's good
It's
stuff.
crazy, like, think about it, like, that's something that was in the '70s, that's
Wild.
still in the '20s, is going just as strong, maybe stronger,
How many movies did they do for Star Wars?
like 400, 400,
At least 497.
like 420 or something like that.
Exactly.
Alright, last thing, it's not a question, it's more I want a story from you. I want a near-death story where you're like, "Holy crap, I could have died just now."
Like, where do I start? I hate that I have a few of these.
I know, right?
Oh,
Funny,
okay.
most people do, you're like, Rolodex, like, I could tell them that story, I could tell them
Right?
that story.
Yeah, yeah.
Most
It's
people do.
okay. So I will go with the no offense, West Edmonton Mall. Great place to go. However, if you go to the amusement park, just really be careful. So my parents took me there. We were on a ride called the Zipper. I don't know if you've ever been on that at the carnivals where it's like
Oh, the one that
it
goes up, like, around in circles, but it also has a thing that
exactly, and the cages are
yeah.
spinning simultaneously. So there's a height check, and my height never got checked for it. And the girl was just like, "Yeah, go, 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 go." So, okay, whatever, we get on. Not realizing that the value of the height check is whether or not the bar lines up to hold you into the ride.
Mm,
So the ride starts going. This girl's chatting it up to whoever forever. We're on this ride for ages, man, for ages. And I slip out from underneath the bar and I'm like this, face, hands plastered on the grid of the cage. My dad swoops me back and he had to physically hold me in. I'm screaming and crying. My mom notices. Again, the lady running the ride is just chatting, just having a great old Saturday afternoon or whatever it was.
mhm, mhm.
And my mom ended up having to scream at her and tell her that I'm not strapped into this ride, and my dad just for dear life kept me pinned onto the thing, but, that had my dad have not acted so quickly, I definitely feel like it coulda swung open and maybe there'd be no me. I don't know.
O
It felt a little
or you're
heavy.
with a kid your age
Yes.
that couldn't have held you back.
That's the thing.
That's
And in
crazy.
hindsight, I'm like, I think my parents definitely gave a bit of an earful, but I'm like, if that happened nowadays and with social media and everything, that wouldn't
Done.
fly.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah.
does. But that was one where I for sure, I think I got off that ride and probably thanked the ancestors. That was some shit. That was
That's crazy.
Ooh, yeah, yeah.
Alright, Justine, where are you most active online? Like, where should people be following you?
Definitely on Instagram. I'd say Instagram at Justine Tyrell. That's kind of the main hub of where I, push all my stuff out through and
Yeah.
that's yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thanks again for doing this with us today, and
Such a
we'll tag you, when we're throwing this stuff around online.
sounds great. Thank you so much for the chat. This was awesome.